Welcome to the southernmost tip of India, an incredibly beautiful 910 square kilometer island, a UNESCO designated biosphere reserve home to the Nicobar long-tailed macaque, and one of the most remote places in India, the Great Nicobar Island. But in February, the National Green Tribunal, a special court to address environmental issues, cleared the way for a rather controversial 81,000 crore mega project here. This is an important yet complicated story, and at its heart are three things pulling in entirely different directions: national security, economic growth, and ecological protection. Yes, it is complicated because it seems like we can't honor one without compromising something else. And all three factors have been more important than ever before. The fear of World War III seems closer than ever. Global economic growth has stagnated, and of course, climate change is the defining issue of our times. To be honest, we've taken a while to understand all facets of the story ourselves to bring it to you. I'm Lavanya, and in this episode of The Climate Brief, we are going to tell you everything you need to know about the Great Nicobar project and leave you with a few critical questions to think about. Let's start by flying down to where this is. This is the eastern coast of India. And if you travel south, at the end of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, almost touching Indonesia, is the Great Nicobar Islands. Around 80% of this land is covered in lush, dense, primary tropical rainforest. It's home to over 1,800 species of animals and plants, with new ones still being discovered every year. Only about 8,000 people live here, which includes members of indigenous tribes like Shompen and Nicobaris and settlers from the mainland. Scientists call it one of the hottest biodiversity hotspots on the planet, largely because it remained untouched until now. And this is where the project comes in. It's called the Holistic Development of the Greater Nicobar Island and has four major parts. Number one, the port. At the Galathea Bay, the government wants to build a transshipment port called the International Container Transshipment Terminal. But wait, what does transshipment even mean? Say a ship is carrying goods from Europe to India. It's likely to be an ultra-large vessel which can hold thousands of containers at once. Such vessels can't directly come to Indian ports. They first go to a large deep water port where they can dock. Here, the cargo is transferred to smaller vessels and then taken to the final destination. For most Indian cargo, this happens in Colombo, Singapore, or Malaysia. This means India is paying an extra $80 to $300 in handling fees for every container and an extra 3 days in transit. Currently, only one Indian port can handle transshipments for ultra-large vessels, the Vizhinjam port in Kerala, which has been operational since last year. Number two, the airport. Right next to the port, a brand new greenfield airport will be built. It will be longer and of dual use, meaning both civilian planes and military aircrafts will operate from it. This won't be the island's first airport though. The island already has an airstrip, the Navy's existing airstrip at INS Bars. Number three, the township. To run a port, an airport, and everything in between, what is the most important piece? People. So this project also proposes building a big township for the workers, their families, defense personnel, and also tourists. Yes, you heard me right. Not just defense or trade, tourism too. Number four, the power plant. And of course, to power it all, a 450 megavolt ampere gas and solar plant. Now look at what this actually means on the ground. In total, the project is said to be 166 square kilometers, which is 1/5 of this island. And 130 of those square kilometers is dense tropical forest that will have to be cleared. Nearly 90% of the project area, around 149 square kilometers, goes to the township, while the airport takes up 8.45 square kilometers and the port 7.66, the power plant 0.39. But why build this massive project on one of the most remote protected islands in the country? And why now? Three things: geopolitics, trade, and tourism. Remember where Nicobar sits? 1600 kilometers away from the mainland, closer to Indonesia than to Chennai. Now, look east from it. Between India's east coast and Southeast Asia, India has limited military presence and no port, but China does. Through its string of pearls, significant influence in the Indian Ocean. It has spent the last 2 decades building ports, military facilities, and naval bases across the ocean, from Pakistan to Sri Lanka and Myanmar. So India's Ministry of External Affairs has flagged the importance of strengthening our own presence in this region. The Great Nicobar project, the government says, is doing just that. But let's also keep in mind that India already has a defense presence there, a naval base in the Great Nicobar Island. Let's now look at trade. There are 3 major shipping routes from Europe, the Middle East, and Africa to Asia. And all 3 of them pass through one narrow 65-kilometer wide stretch of water right here. This is the Strait of Malacca. This choke point handles roughly 30% of all internationally traded cargo and nearly $3.5 trillion worth of goods. The Greater Nicobar Island sits just 40 miles from the Malacca Strait. A new port on the island would enable India to invite more maritime traffic. Right now, 75% of India's transshipped cargo is handled by foreign ports such as Colombo, Singapore, and Klang. A port in Nicobar, the government argues, would allow for part of this transshipment to happen at an Indian port, and that could save between $200 million and $220 million each year. Finally, let's look at tourism. The government has ambitious visions for what Great Nicobar could become in 30 years. Maybe even like Singapore, like Hong Kong. The proposed construction plan, covering 80% of the project area, includes hospitals, shopping and entertainment centers, luxury tourism infrastructure, and residences. This will lead to 1 lakh new direct jobs and 1.5 lakh indirect jobs during the next 30 years via tourism, townships, and port operations. With this, the island's current population of 8,000 is projected to grow to 3.5 lakh people over the next 30 years. That is a 4,000% increase. So it looks like the port and tourism boost could result in economic gains, but not everyone is convinced. Even before we get into the ecological costs, critics have long questioned the economic viability and feasibility of the project itself. 1. Great Nicobar currently has very limited infrastructure, hardly any roads, and this project jumps from zero development to a mega city in 30 years. Given our track record of infrastructure projects on the mainland itself, think of Bangalore's famous Ejipura flyover. Is an ambitious project like this viable on a remote island 1600 kilometers away? 2. At 1600 kilometers from the mainland, transporting cargo from the island will add significant costs and still take a long time. Using Colombo for transshipment may actually be faster for goods that need to finally go to ports like Chennai. 3. Are the estimates about the shipping traffic that the port will attract realistic? Singapore and Colombo's ports have been operational for decades. Will major shipping companies actually switch the Great Nicobar port? Plus, we have Vizhinjam in Kerala that is already capturing a share of India's transshipment volume. So the big question is, can the Great Nicobar port realistically attract enough traffic to justify its cost? We are finally at the point where all the rage online about the Great Nicobar Island will make sense. We've talked about the government's arguments for the project, the benefits it brings, but now we will tell you what is at risk. To begin with, Great Nicobar sits in seismic zone 5, which is the highest earthquake risk zone. In the last 10 years, the island has recorded 444 earthquakes, which is one almost every single week. Remember the 2004 tsunami? Great Nicobar Island was one of the hardest hit areas then, and in fact, submerged the lighthouse on the southernmost tip, subsiding it by 4.25 meters. The question is whether building a mega project in one of the most seismically active pieces of land in the world, is it feasible? Is it economically viable? Now let's picture what Great Nicobar actually is today. 80% of this island is dense, ancient rainforest, all untouched. The project will clear out 130 square kilometers of this rainforest, and government reports say that 9.5 lakh trees will be cut. But experts put this number to be much more. Rainforests have as many as 500 to 900 trees per hectare, which means as many as 1 crore trees could be cut. Studies show that this much area of rainforest removes around 10,000 tons of carbon dioxide every year from the atmosphere. That's removing the annual carbon dioxide emissions of close to 6,700 cars on Indian roads by trees alone. The government does have a compensation plan though, planting trees in Haryana and Madhya Pradesh. That's like someone demolishing your home in the Andamans and then saying, "Why are you angry? We'll build you a new one in the Aravallis." Address different, PIN codes different, the ecosystem entirely different. The dense rainforests of Andamans cannot be compensated by deciduous forests in central and north India, even if in higher numbers. Loss of biodiversity, animal and human species is unimaginable. For example, every year, giant leatherback turtles, the largest sea turtles on the planet by the way, migrate 10,000 kilometers from Australia and Africa to nest at Galathea Bay. But the port is being built on that very beach. In fact, in 2021, the Galathea Bay Wildlife Sanctuary was denotified to make way for the project. The government's mitigation plan is to leave 300 meters of this 3,000-meter bay open for nesting. Whether a species that has navigated these waters for millions of years can adapt to the noise and traffic of a major container port? Now that is a question no study has yet answered. But it's not just damage on land. Corals will suffer too. Great Nicobar's southern coastline has 20,688 corals, and this will be massively impacted by the project. Corals cover less than 1% of the seafloor globally, but support at least 25% of all marine species and are the first line of defense against tsunamis, the very threat that this island already faces. In 2020, the project area was mapped as a protected coastal zone under ICRZ 1A, where construction is banned. By 2021, very conveniently, the same area has been reclassified to permit ports, just weeks before the environmental clearance was granted. Again, the government has a plan to address this loss, to translocate these corals. The translocation plan accounts for only 16,150 of the 20,668 colonies and is not always successful. Corals are already the most vulnerable to climate change, and up to 90% of them could be lost by 2050 due to the warming planet. Translocation, in that context, may not be a safety net. And there's one more aspect that we can't forget: the people. The people who have been living on this island for generations. The forests of Great Nicobar are home to two indigenous communities: the Nicobaris, who lived along the island's coastal region for centuries, and the Shompen, who are one of the most isolated communities on Earth. The Great Nicobar also houses settlers from the Indian mainland who moved there in the 1960s, the 70s. There are fewer than 300 people in the Shompen community, classified as a particularly vulnerable tribal group with a history spanning over 10,000 years. They have almost no contact with the outside world. The project's own EIA states that any disturbance to their environment may cause serious threat to their existence. Meanwhile, the Nicobaris have already been displaced from their ancestral land post the 2004 tsunami earthquake and had been fighting for their land. This project is now being built on the very land that they are fighting for. While Environment Minister Bhupendra Yadav has maintained that tribal interests will not be affected adversely, tribal leaders from the Nicobaris community allege that their consent was obtained under duress. So with all this documented, where does the project stand today? On February 16th of 2026, the NGT gave this project the green signal. A 6-member bench found no good ground to interfere and cited adequate safeguards. But legal observers and critics argue that this verdict now sets a precedent for every future project the government labels strategically important and plans in an ecologically sensitive area. So this is where we are. A project of great strategic value on an island of irreplaceable ecological value, with communities whose rights and survival are bound entirely to it. We're finally at the end of the video, but instead of answers, we like to leave you with a few questions. If this is truly a defense priority, why does 90% of the land go to building a massive township to make it a tourist hub open to the world? The defense objective could be met with a much lower ecological footprint. Is this simply another commercial project dressed up as a national security priority? The ecological costs of the project will be mostly borne by the 8,000 people who live there and the natural ecosystem. And they seem fairly certain. The benefits, though, will go to a few private parties. And at this point, we can't even be sure of the project's success. So if this goes ahead, is there a chance that we will end up destroying an irreplaceable forest and uprooting the lives of 8,000 people for nothing? And finally, when a government labels something as strategically important, how much ecological weight can that label carry? Thank you for watching all the way here. Subscribe to our channel if this made you think, and do let us know your thoughts in the comments below.